Greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. With the new season of Preacher slated to premiere in just a few days from now, I figured now would be a good time to get that hype ball rolling, if you know what I mean. And what better way to do that than with a prediction video for the final season? Now, I will be basing my predictions off of the various promos that were released from AMC, as well as the San Diego Comic-Con trailer. And to be perfectly honest, there really wasn't a whole lot of promotional material, and the San Diego Comic-Con trailer was about a minute long, so I'm also going to be including the source material into my predictions as well. So this is my obligatory warning to you guys that there will be major spoilers from the comic, including the ending. So if you have not read the comic and absolutely do not want to know what could potentially happen on the show, well, you might want to exit out of here now and save this video for a later date. However, if you don't mind knowing all the details, well, go ahead and pull yourself up a seat, pour yourself a bottle of some of that fine rat water, and ladies and gentlemen of the congregation, church services now begins. Now, I want to reiterate before I get into the nitty-gritty of things that what I am about to say here is 100% speculation. I am not familiar with any of the spoilers on the set of the final season. So what I'm about to say, again, is speculation, so take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. So, what do we know so far? Well, based off of the San Diego Comic-Con trailer, it's been confirmed that two comic characters, Jesus Desaad and Frankie, will be making their appearance this season. However, Frankie's name was not revealed in the trailer, so it is very possible that this character could be a remix of Frankie. It's just they give him an original name exclusively for the show. However, the writers have had a pretty good track record of actually bringing comic characters to the show and actually keeping their name, as opposed to just remixing their arc and giving the character an original name exclusively for the show, if you know what I mean. So there is a huge possibility that this character could indeed be Frankie. One thing that did catch my eye about this trailer was Hairstar's ear injury, and it actually makes me wonder if it's going to go down like it did in the comic. Now, Hairstar did get an ear injury in the comic. It was Tulip that actually shot off his ear, and like I said, it makes me wonder if this is exactly how it's going to happen in the show, or if it's going to be something entirely different. After all, Tulip didn't exactly get the same death like she did in the comic, because in the comic it was Jody that shot her dead, as opposed to Featherstone shooting her down. Now, for those of you who are fans of Cassidy, be prepared, because you are potentially going to get hit with a double whammy. First off, based off of what we've seen in the trailer, and also based off of the comic, Cassidy gets tortured, and let me tell you, as someone who has read the source material and gotten to the scene, it's quite brutal. And in fact, in the comic, Cassidy is tortured by Frankie, and Frankie uses his gun and blows off his limbs and all this other shit. He even goes as far as blowing off his, his little member downstairs. And from what I've seen of the trailer, it actually might be worse on the show, because in case you couldn't tell, it looks like Frankie's gonna be using some stabby objects to go into Cassidy's little member there. So yeah, prepare yourselves for that. And for the second whammy to be delivered to us poor Cassidy fans is that, well, let's just say he's probably not the kind of person you thought that he would be. In fact, this final season, we are probably going to see a very dark side to Prontius Cassidy. For you show-only fans, I must say that you guys are actually rather lucky, because you've actually gotten some pieces here and there in previous seasons to indicate that Cassidy is not the jovial, happy-go-lucky Irishman that you probably think he is. As someone who read the comic when it got to his backstory, I was really thrown for a loop because Garth Ennis really never gave any plausible hints, from my perspective at least, that he didn't really go into little tiny foreshadowing early on as to Cassidy's personality. So in order to explain what I mean by Cassidy's dark side is that I'm going to have to go into some context from the comic. So Jesse, Cassidy, and Tulip end up on a plane. I believe, if I remember correctly, it belonged to the Grail. Well, a fight ensues, and Jesse is sucked out of the plane, leaving Tulip and Cassidy by themselves, them thinking that Jesse is obviously dead, which, of course, in reality, he's not. So right after Jesse's story arc where he becomes sheriff and runs this town, and he ends up getting reunited with Tulip. Tulip ends up revealing to Jesse that Cassidy has been really bad to her. In fact, he's gone as far as drugging Tulip and taking advantage of her. I mean, some seriously messed up shit. And then later on in the comic, Cassidy ends up revealing to Jesse his backstory, and he's lived a pretty fucked up life. I believe it's either the 20s or 30s. He's living in New York. He's a massive junkie. He's getting hooked up with prostitutes, and he ends up, well, kind of beating the shit out of a woman. So I think that there is a huge possibility that they are going to go over some of Cassidy's backstory, especially the ones of his really messed up life from like the 1920s or 30s. That's why I'm thinking there probably might more than likely end up going over that in the show. And then also, as far as the whole relationship between Tulip and Cassidy going completely sour, I definitely think that will for sure happen on the show. There are some clips from the various promos that I have seen to indicate that yes, that is indeed what's going to happen, is that Jesse is going to get separated from Tulip and Cassidy is for sure going to take full advantage of Tulip. Now, I don't think that he's necessarily going to use any heavy drugs on her. I'm talking heroin and all those kinds of narcotics. I don't think he's really going to use that on her to try to manipulate her. Remember that love potion that he purchased from Grandma Langelle? Well, I think that little bottle of love potion is going to come into play, and that Cassidy is going to use that love potion to manipulate Tulip. I guess the writers don't want to make him look even more of a bad guy than he actually is in the comic. Since it has been confirmed that this season will indeed be the series finale, it's safe to say that there are going to be some remixing of the source material in the show, and there's going to be a lot of source material that is not going to get adapted for the show. The question is, which of the story arcs are going to make its way to the show and which ones are going to stay primarily just with the comic only? I think it's safe to say that what I'd like to call Sheriff Jesse Custer's story arc is not going to make its way into the show, mainly for the reason that the antagonist of this particular story arc is Odin Kincannon. And Odin Kincannon, as many of you know, has been introduced early on in season 1 and has also been killed off in that same season. So, like I said, I think it's safe to say that that particular story arc will only be in the comic. It will not be making its way into the show. Based off of what I've seen in the trailer, it looks like Jesse, Tulip, and Cassidy are indeed going to end up on the plane. So there's that huge possibility that Jesse will ending up just like his comic counterpart, getting sucked out of the plane. Of course, the question is, what is going to be Jesse's journey during this time, because as I mentioned before, right after he gets sucked out of the plane, he ends up becoming sheriff of this community and gets into this heated fight with Odin Kincannon. But since I mentioned that I highly doubt that that particular story arc is going to be coming to the show, I think instead that particular story is going to be replaced with Jesus Assad. So the question is, will Jesse end up losing an eye? Well, if my prediction turns out to be true, then he might not end up losing his eye after all. I guess we'll have to see about that. Then, of course, we get to what I'm sure all of you are wondering, and that is, what is going to be God's fate? Now, in the comic, the Saint of Killers ends up killing God, and he takes his spot as the rightful ruler of heaven. So the question is God going to end up with the same fate as he did in the comic and get killed by the Saint of Killers? Is Jesse going to kill him, or is it going to be like how it was implied in the first season that Jesse was going to kick his ass? So I'm wondering if God is just going to get an ass beating instead, and he's possibly going to lose his spot as ruler of heaven. Then we get to the fate of our main characters. What is going to be in store for them in the finale? Now, in the comic, both Hairstar and Featherstone are killed. Jesse and Tulip kind of go their separate ways, and Cassidy is made human, which was kind of one of my personal favorite parts to the ending there, but I digress. As I mentioned before, Saint of Killers kills God and assumes his place as the ruler of heaven. And then Eugene, after becoming a rock star and falling from grace, yes, that actually did happen in the comic, he did become a rock star. But after that whole story arc, he ends up meeting this sweet, lovely girl, and they end up getting together, and they, in a sense, live happily ever after. So the question is, will all these characters end up with the same fate as their comic counterparts? That is a very huge possibility. I think that Hairstar and Featherstone will for sure die in the final season, and I think Jesse and Tulip might end up going their separate ways. Like, they might end up mutually breaking up, and I certainly hope that Cassidy ends up becoming human in the end, or he gets some sort of happy ending. Now it is your time, fellow members of the congregation. Which kind of predictions do you have? What is your speculation? Do you think that there's certain characters that are going to die? We'd like to know exactly what you think. So if you would like to share your speculation, your predictions, please feel free to leave a comment down below. And thanks for watching, and until next time, dear friends, this is Cynical Lindsay, signing off.